On this Friday night, Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is sworn in along with his cabinet.
We're a very focused government.
What this means for the carbon tax and when he could call an election. 51st state debate. America's top diplomat defends Trump's talk during a G7 summit in Quebec. We'll tell you who's sticking up for Canada. Elbows up, tourism.
Canadians love to travel, but they're angry.
Canadian staycations are causing a local business boom, and why Americans are also coming to Canada. Plus, another frightening flight.
Oh my God!
The rush to escape this burning passenger plane.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
I, Mark Carney, do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to His Majesty, King Charles III, King of Canada, his heirs and successors.
Former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney taking his oath at Rideau Hall today, becoming the 24th Prime Minister of Canada, succeeding Justin Trudeau. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Prime Minister Carney's new cabinet was also unveiled and sworn in today. His team represents a significant downsizing from Trudeau's cabinet, going from 38 to just 24 ministers, making this the smallest federal cabinet in 3 decades. And those are familiar faces. All but 3 were ministers under Trudeau. Carney's cabinet will likely be short-lived, with an election call expected soon. And in the meantime, they've got a trade war to contend with. And their first order of business today, cancelling the consumer carbon tax. David Akin begins our coverage tonight.
I will truly and faithfully, and to the best of my skill and knowledge, execute the powers and trust reposed in me as Prime Minister.
Canada's 24th Prime Minister took the oath and then headed immediately to Parliament Hill for the first meeting of his cabinet, where he signed the Canadian equivalent of a presidential executive order to end the consumer carbon tax.
We will be eliminating the Canada fuel charge, the consumer fuel charge, immediately. And we will be ensuring that those Canadians who have received rebates will continue to receive a rebate in the next quarter. The next payment is before the end of April.
And that means rebate checks will almost certainly be arriving in the middle of an election campaign. As for the cabinet itself, though, there are 0 ministers who represent ridings in Alberta or Saskatchewan. And there's only 1 from BC, 1 from Manitoba.
I'm Prime Minister of all of Canada, of course, and I'm from the West.
True, Carney did grow up in Edmonton, but it's been many years since he actually lived there. In any event, Carney's cabinet keeps the same core group of ministers focused on Donald Trump in the U.S. that Justin Trudeau had, albeit with some new roles. Dominic LeBlanc remains as Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs and takes on the international trade portfolio. He gives up the role of Finance Minister to François-Philippe Champagne.
Today's a new era of fiscal responsibility in our country. As Prime Minister Carney said, we'll invest more. We'll be very fiscally prudent.
Melanie Joly remains at Foreign Affairs, David McGuinty at Public Safety, and Bill Blair at National Defence.
Canada's new government will be action-oriented, driven by a smaller but highly experienced team made to meet the moment we are in.
So what's next for Prime Minister Carney? Well, he's going to head to London and Paris early in the week to strengthen relationships with the United Kingdom and with Paris in the face of Donald Trump's threats. And then he'll come back to Canada, where he's expected to send the country into its 45th general election by Sunday. Jeff.
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre wasted no time attacking the newly minted Prime Minister and his team, pointing to the fact that Carney's cabinet is essentially a smaller version of Justin Trudeau's.
It's the same Liberal gang with the same Liberal agenda, the same Liberal results, and the same Liberal promises of the last 10 years. Only they want you to be fooled, and they want to take 4 terms.
And Mercedes Stevenson joins me now from Ottawa. So, Mercedes, what do you make of Carney's cabinet choices?
You know, Jeff, not surprised by some of the choices there. He only really has Liberal caucus to choose from unless he took the really unconventional step of putting unelected people in cabinet. He already himself doesn't hold a seat, so that would be a potential political liability for him. Now, this too is a political liability in that he will have to convince Canadians this is a very different cabinet and a different government than under Justin Trudeau, that it's about business and a move to the centre and practical concerns. But there's another person he has to convince who doesn't live in Canada, Donald Trump in the White House. His relationship with Mr. Trump will be critical, and we've heard from a number of Trump officials that they believed some of Trump's rhetoric had to do with his poor relationship with former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. We will find out if that is the case under Mr. Carney, but he will certainly have to convince Mr. Trump that he's a different kind of leader who's there, and we'll see whether that changes the tone or if this was about something else for Mr. Trump all along, i.e. the 51st state and tariffs.
All right. And as we mentioned, this is the smallest cabinet we've seen in decades. What does that tell us, do you think, about Carney's leadership style?
I think it's sending a message, Jeff, that he is going to get down to business quickly, that people have very practical and merged portfolios, that this is a leaner, meaner government, if you will. It could also look like a very different cabinet despite the fact it's the same people. And that's because in Canada, prime ministers, especially since Stephen Harper, have really governed from their office. So what you hear cabinet ministers saying is often what the prime minister wants them to say. So if he has that same style, you could have the same people sounding very different under this prime minister. It's also possible that with a smaller cabinet, though, they will get more of a role, that they will have more to say. However, given what we saw at Rideau Hall today, where only Mr. Carney spoke, he may also proceed in the same mold as the previous two prime ministers in that tight fist on his cabinet ministers.
Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa. Thanks. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs is not happy with one of Carney's cabinet picks. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu is staying in her post. First Nations leaders have criticized her handling of Jordan's Principle, a program providing critical support services for First Nations youth. Melissa Ridgen joins me now. So, Melissa, what are the Chiefs concerned about here?
Jeff, Jordan's Principle cannot be defunded or scrapped. Canada is legally obligated to deliver this program, but those that the program are meant to help the most seem to agree it is spun out of control. First Nations chiefs across the country are concerned that their communities have been painted as the problem, and they're now putting the ball back in Ottawa's court.
Spend, spend, spend. Never say no. That was exactly the message that I received when I was chief. I know that is the message that all of our leadership received.
For years, parents and Jordan's Principle coordinators across Canada took that to mean aim for the sky with funding requests that ballooned to $3 million alone in 2023-24. Since 2016, the federal government says it has spent almost $9 billion on the program. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu told Global News last month her government was reining in spending and that Jordan's Principle was no longer acting in the spirit it was intended.
We're going to continue to work with those providers that are struggling in terms of some of the claims that they have in. Really, I think what we're asking is what we ask really any other kinds of providers, the detailed kind of information that's necessary to make the decisions at the department level.
Ernest Anderson, the father of the boy the initiative is named after, called for an emergency meeting into the program earlier this year.
We need your support, people across Canada, that stand up with us. Stand up with us. We need your help.
Chiefs say the Liberal government has only itself to blame for the mess. Hajdu didn't just blame First Nations. She said that provinces have been misusing Jordan's Principle to fund teachers' assistance, which is not a federal responsibility. Several chiefs hoped that Canada's new Prime Minister Mark Carney would name a new Indigenous Services Minister. They did not get their wish. Jeff.
Melissa Ridgen in Winnipeg. Thanks, Melissa. The trade war sparked by Trump's tariffs is already resulting in job cuts here in Canada, with businesses ranging from steel to furniture announcing layoffs in recent weeks. The latest job losses are hitting 20 workers at this steel plant in Sault Ste. Marie and 30 workers at another plant in eastern Ontario. 120 workers at Avoca Rolling Mills plant have also been laid off temporarily for at least 1 week. Trump slapped 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum on Tuesday. Trump's musings about making Canada the 51st state were reportedly discussed at a meeting of G7 leaders in Quebec. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says she told her U.S. counterpart, Marco Rubio, that Canada's sovereignty must be respected. As Touria Izri reports, Canada's allies are also weighing in.
A mere difference of opinion. That's how America's top diplomat described ongoing threats to violate Canadian sovereignty.
There's a disagreement between the president's position and the position of the Canadian government.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio tried to paint Donald Trump's 51st state talk as a two-sided debate, an idea Canada calls a non-starter.
What I said to the Secretary is Canada's sovereignty is not up to debate, period.
But the message does not appear to be getting through to the Trump administration, which continues to entertain annexation.
The president has made his argument as to why he thinks Canada would be better off joining the United States for economic purposes.
Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly says her European counterparts at the G7 summit initially brushed off Trump's comments.
The reaction of my colleagues coming from Europe was really about this absurd threat of annexation. Was really is that a joke?
The tone seems to be shifting.
Alongside our Canadian friends, we share a sovereign, we share a history.
In Charlevoix, it's the Germans who are most willing to speak up for Canada.
We Germans and Canada are not only partners, we are close friends. And friends have each other's back.
The foreign ministers tried to present a united front here. But that's a difficult task when you have one G7 member threatening the very existence of another. Jeff?
Touria Izri in La Malbaie, Quebec. Thanks, Touria. The U.S. president has a complicated relationship with the justice system. Trump has routinely criticized the FBI, judges, and has had his own run-ins with the law, convicted as a felon in New York State. But today, as his administration faces more legal trouble, Trump made a visit to the halls of judicial power. Candace Cole reports from Washington.
The DOJ and the FBI will once again become the premier crime-fighting agencies on the face of the earth.
President Trump's visit to the U.S. Department of Justice Friday was marked by praise of his new team.
Pam Bondi, she's extraordinary. Our new director of the FBI, Kash Patel. Kash, right.
And demonizing the previous administration.
There could be no more heinous betrayal of American values than to use the law to terrorize the innocent and reward the wicked. And that's what they were doing at a level that's never been seen before. And it's exactly what you saw with Joe Biden, Merrick Garland, and their cronies.
Trump outlined his vision for remaking the Justice Department, focusing on tackling crime and deporting undocumented immigrants.
And we're ending the migrant occupation of America. And what we're doing now is we're liberating our cities and our suburbs and our towns.
While on the campaign trail, Trump vowed retribution against the DOJ after facing multiple federal cases, including election subversion and mishandling classified documents.
We revoked the clearances of deranged Jack Smith, Alvin Bragg, Letitia James, and the crooked law firms that aided their partisan persecutions.
He also pardoned those convicted in the January 6th insurrection. Now Trump's administration faces mounting legal battles in his slashing of the federal government. The latest coming on Thursday when federal judges reversed the firing of thousands of probationary employees across several government agencies.
It's very clear that there are judicial activists throughout our judicial branch who are trying to block this president's executive authority. We are going to fight back.
A fight that's bound to continue as the U.S. president continues to implement his sweeping changes. Candace Cole, Global News, Washington.
An Ontario man accused of stealing a famous portrait of Winston Churchill has pleaded guilty. Jeffrey Wood was convicted of 3 charges, including theft and trafficking stolen property. The Roaring Lion portrait was quietly removed from Ottawa's Chateau Laurier Hotel in 2022 and replaced with a fake. That brazen heist wasn't discovered until a year later. The original portrait was eventually found in Italy and has since been returned. Terrifying moments on an airport tarmac. Coming up, how passengers escaped their plane that erupted in flames. The moon put on an impressive show last night. A total lunar eclipse, also known as a blood moon, cast a red hue over Canada for the first time since 2022. The lunar event attracted stargazers from around the world. It isn't set to happen again until this time next year. In the U.S., an investigation is underway into a fire on an American Airlines flight yesterday that sent passengers fleeing onto the wing. Thick black smoke poured out of the plane and blew right across the tarmac. The Federal Aviation Administration says the aircraft caught fire while taxiing to the gate after landing.
There's flames because I was sitting right by the wing and I saw flames out the window, and then the plastic of the window was melting and bubbling and people were screaming, and it was very surreal.
12 people were taken to hospital with minor injuries. The plane was forced to divert and land in Denver after the crew reported engine vibrations. The U.S. president claims talks with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, on the war in Ukraine are going well.
We're looking for the ceasefire now with Russia, and we've had some very good talks about it. We've had some very good responses.
U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff met with Putin last night in Moscow. Today, Trump urged the Kremlin to spare Ukrainian troops in the Russian region of Kursk. Ukrainian forces have held territory there for more than 7 months, but are now retreating. Putin claims he would honor Trump's appeal if those soldiers surrendered. The arrest of a former Philippine president still ahead. How Rodrigo Duterte landed in the International Criminal Court accused of murder. The former president of the Philippines showed little emotion as he appeared by video link at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. Rodrigo Duterte was arrested in Manila this week on murder charges for leading a war on drugs that led to tens of thousands of deaths. Families of the victims gathered to watch the hearing. Duterte's lawyers said he's suffering from a debilitating medical condition. He denied the charges and likened his arrest to a political kidnapping. Duterte's critics are calling his arrest the first step on the long path to justice. Mike Armstrong reports on the political earthquake in the Philippines.
After literally daring the International Criminal Court to go after him, Rodrigo Duterte is now in its custody. The former Philippine president was whisked Wednesday into the ICC's detention center in The Hague. This video shared on social media appears to have been shot on the plane carrying Duterte to the Netherlands. In it, he tells supporters he's been arrested because he pushed for law and order.
For your oath of office.
Duterte was sworn in as president of the Philippines in 2016, elected as a populist promising to wipe out drug crime.
If you destroy the generation of Filipinos coming up to replace us, I will kill you. Simple as that.
Duterte's crackdown, by some estimates, led to as many as 30,000 deaths. Some were killed by police and soldiers, others by death squads and hired mercenaries. There was strong criticism from international human rights groups, but Duterte didn't pull back. Instead, in 2019, he withdrew his country from the International Court. The ICC can, however, prosecute Duterte for crimes committed prior to the withdrawal. The arrest is welcome news to families of some of the victims killed in the drug war. Emily Soriano's son Angelito was 15 years old when he was gunned down by masked vigilantes. She says her son was never given due process, something Duterte is getting. He sleeps in a nice bed, she says, while my child is rotting in a cemetery. Now, Duterte does still have supporters. His base is in the south and with evangelical Christian groups. Duterte knew the ICC was after him. He told a Senate hearing in October he was prepared to go to jail and was responsible for things police did to drug dealers. I told them that if they're holding a gun, kill them immediately, he says. So there will be one less criminal. Now, observers say as a flight risk, Duterte will likely be denied bail and stay in detention. A trial could take several years, meaning the 79-year-old could spend the rest of his days behind bars. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Tariffs and tourism. Up next, the industry seeing a silver lining in the Canada-U.S. trade war. Welcome back. Donald Trump's tariff tiff with Canada has heightened anxiety in the business community. But one sector that's seeing an upside seems to be tourism. As Heather Yerkes West reports, Canadians are avoiding travel to the U.S. in droves and choosing instead to rediscover their own country.
Visit Europe away from Europe. It's all in your own backyard.
Toronto travel company Lansby was created during the pandemic to sell tours of Canada to Canadians.
Because no one could come into the country and we couldn't leave.
While Canadian tourists can travel abroad this year, it appears many don't want to.
It's really exploded, and there's significant interest in staying home.
Canadians love to travel, but they're angry, and so they're spending their Canadian travel dollars anywhere except the U.S. As a whole, the vacation spend for 2025 by Canadians is $25.5 billion.
As the U.S. tourist sector prepares for losses, the Canadian tourism industry believes it will not only see gains from domestic travelers, but American visitors too.
Secondly, the low Canadian dollar is already becoming a significant attractant for more Americans to venture north, and that the market of choice seems to be Western Canada.
Rodeo tickets as well as concert tickets.
The Calgary Stampede says early ticket sales indicate about a third of the festival's visitors will be coming from the United States this summer. But the trade war is expected to have some negative impacts on the tourism sector as well.
We have the simultaneous hit of business travel being predicted to be down across all major markets in the country.
There's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. But I think in our opinion, the positive should outweigh the negative.
Thanks mainly to Canadians making their vacation plans with elbows up. Heather Yerkes West, Global News, Calgary.
And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Tonight's Your Canada is a Senators game in Ottawa, as well as the communities of Viking, Alberta and Green Hill, Nova Scotia. Please keep sending your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.